Welcome to another edition of Shelter on Base. I am Therese Vinal, joined by Carmen Kiew, Anthony Garcia, and Cole Kuiper. And today we brought on Alex Pavlovic, the beat writer for NBC Sports Bay Area. But you might know him best from Alex Eats. At least that's where his fan club has started, right, Cole? You even got T-shirts going for him.
That's right. I got shirts coming in the mail.
Oh, yeah.
So we brought Alex on because the big thing in baseball right now is the newest proposal sent by the owners for Major League Baseball to initially start back up again. But it's in negotiations right now with the Players Union. And to summarize it a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but it would start in early July. It would be only 82 game season. There would be expanded rosters. Taxi squad would be bigger. Basically no minor league games going on. There would also be no fans in the stands, 14 teams in postseason, and a universal DH. Yeah. What is happening with baseball?
You nailed it. That was all of it. You're changing everything.
I don't like it.
Well, it sounds like a lot that the owners came to terms with to make all of this work, but the big backlash right now is a lot of players don't like the proposal at all. Why is that?
I think it's two reasons. It's the health reason. They haven't heard yet that they're going to be taken care of. That was apparently talked about Tuesday and Wednesday as they met. Fun fact, Corey Guerin's like one of the top Players Association guys. He's like in all those meetings. But that was talked about. The health thing, they want to make sure. A lot of guys have been outspoken about that. Sean Doolittle, chief among them, making sure that they're taken care of. Like they feel like they're the ones taking the risk. Obviously, they are taking the risk. They're all at home right now. So that's a big deal to them. And then the bigger issue, the one that I think is going to drag on for weeks, is the financial issue and trying to figure out. The owners claim that 40% of the revenue comes from fans, from parking, from concessions. They never open their books, so you kind of have to take them at their word, I guess. It's pretty well established. It's about 40%. And so they're saying, hey, we want, in addition to the prorated salary, now we want to account for the fact that we're not making what we would from every game. So that is the bigger discussion, and that is the ugly discussion, as you've seen on Twitter the last few days. And, you've seen, I think, who was it? Trevor Bauer today was very active on Twitter. He always is, but just these guys I think that's where you always, in any negotiation between the players and the Players Association, when it comes down to ultimately deciding how much money is given to the players, it gets ugly.
So I know that, sorry, I was going to ask, just given a lot of this back and forth and needing to vote, so I assume it's a majority, right, that needs to approve the Players Union?
I'm actually not sure how it works, and I don't think they've ever been through this before. So this isn't like your normal, they've never really negotiated in this way before. I think usually they take it to their teams, and there's a player rep. Austin Slater is the Giants' unofficial player rep. He got nominated by Buster Posey and was like, okay, I'm the player rep now. And then all this happened. But usually you take it to the team, they vote among the team, and they take that to the Players Association. But this is a weird time. I'm not sure if they're exactly going by their old rules.
So given that, what do you anticipate? Do you think that their timeline of July is feasible, or do you think negotiations will take a long time? Is there a cap on how long negotiations can take? What are the details in terms of timeline?
I think it's feasible. Every player I've talked to the last week has said he's aiming for July 1st or July. A lot of them look at July 4th as kind of like a symbolic day that maybe they could come back on. But they're all aiming July 1st through 4th. And I know the Giants players have been told to get ready. So all players have been staying ready, but they're just kind of like, hey, be on high alert. And these guys have all been working out at home. And I think if they went in June, if they went to like a 3-week camp in June, we have about another month to figure out the details of that. So there is enough time, but it is going to take, I think it's going to take a while for them to figure out the actual finances. And then after that, you have to take to the players. And I just don't see a situation where they come to a deal that doesn't take more money out of the players' pockets. And there have been a lot of players who have been vocal about that and said, well, I'm not going to return then. So then it becomes a tough choice.
That kind of segues into my question. There's been a lot of players who have been vocal about it. Blake Snell, the Tampa Bay Rays pitcher, was on Twitch last night.
Yeah.
And basically said, we're already taking a pay cut. We agreed to it already. Now you want to take more of our money for a higher risk. Tony Clark, who's the executive director of the Players Association, former Detroit Tigers first baseman, he said that this is essentially a salary cap, and as we all know, there's no salary cap in baseball. So my question was, what concessions do the owners need to make to the players? But is it just that they just need to pay them the money?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the salary cap because there's like a bigger thing here, which is the CBA expires after next season. So this was going to be a big fight anyway, and I think it's been headed that way for a couple of years. So now it just kind of happened this year instead of happening after 2021. And the owners are smart. They see this as an opportunity to have some changes now. I mean, like the DH thing. I don't know that we ever go back to life without a DH because you do it this season, all of a sudden next year you say, hey, let's just do it one more year. We'll renegotiate the CBA. And I agree with you, Cole, but like I just think they're going to try to do things now that they can get away with. And they also know that they always are in a situation where they are the ones who are billionaires and they can get by during this time. And the players, some of them, Snell will be fine, Bauer will be fine. But think about all the guys who are, just breaking in, who haven't made that much money. They're not going to sit here and kind of withstand that much longer. So the owners are trying to take advantage. And part of that is I don't know if I would agree that it's a salary cap, but tying it to revenue certainly changes the way you do things.
Well, one thing I know for sure is RIP, text your friends, right, Alex?
I know. I actually wrote that this morning because Brian Sabian was like, it makes sense to have a DH this year. And then I was writing a story about why it makes sense. And you think about it, and like starting pitchers are probably going to be going 3 innings at first. So you have a reliever coming in, another one. They're going to have expanded rosters. And as I was doing that, I remembered like, oh yeah, all those relief pitcher at bats that are so fun are probably gone.
Yeah, I mean, never let a crisis go to waste, right? This is your chance to get rid of the thing I love most.
I know. This is what they do. It is smart business. It's not great to watch from the outside, but it's smart business to try to get as much as they can right now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the minor league players. I know you wrote that article about Bart and Hjelle and their place on the team this year. How do you see this shaking out for minor leaguers, not just in the Giants system, but across baseball entirely?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that, for me at least, that there probably won't be minor league baseball this season. I mean, you think about the finances involved here just for big league teams and how hard it is for them to figure out. And then every team has 6 or 7 affiliates. It's just too much. And there's not a lot of money involved for those teams. So you're talking about kind of don't let a crisis go to waste. The owners have also wanted to cut down on minor league baseball. So all of a sudden they have a chance to maybe do that organically. I think teams are going to have to figure out. I'm really curious to see what the Giants do. I think it's a no-brainer to put Joey Bart on the roster. You're going to have 30 players, maybe more. You're going to have a taxi squad. You probably are going to have 3 catchers. You're going to have a DH. So to me, you don't want him to waste this year. He's not old, but he's getting up there a little bit in age. He did come out of college. And then I think with the guys in the middle are like the Elliot Ramos guys who were not going to be in that situation. Maybe he was going to be called up in September. But all of a sudden it's like, if he's not going to play, what do you do with him? And I know the Giants are trying to figure out how to do that. I mean, you can only have so many guys on this taxi squad. You can only have so many guys in a mini camp. Personally, I don't know. I think, Carmen, you've been to the Arizona Fall League. I love the Fall League, and I think Arizona's going to be more loose with the rules. They already have been. So I think teams should just expand their Fall League rosters and maybe do that and get these guys those at-bats. But it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of guys. Hunter Bishop, who I know you guys had on your show, I mean, this was going to be his first full season. No matter what, he's not going to get probably half the at-bats he was going to get in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, just to pivot off of Cole's question, with the way that the minor leagues will be, they won't play games this year, so some guys will kind of be forced into this major league situation maybe before they're ready. Do you think the Giants are well positioned as compared to the other teams, the way that their minor league team is laid out?
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of these things make the Giants better. Like the shortened season is better for them because over 162 games, you get exposed a little bit. I don't think the DH is a huge problem for them because Alex Dickerson and Hunter Pence probably should be doing a lot of that anyway. It'll help keep him healthy. So there's a lot of things that'll help him. I think it maybe helps get Joey Bart up and maybe help some of these prospects, like you mentioned. But then you look around the division and kind of go like, oh yeah, the Dodgers can just move Max Muncy to DH and make AJ Pollock a full-time outfielder. Like they can do all sorts of things that give them even more of an advantage.
Great.
So I don't know if, yeah, I don't know if it ultimately will help them too much. I think they are well positioned with their young kids, and it certainly, they're creative. They were building a pitching staff that's built for this. I mean, they were not building a 5-man pitching rotation and with a closer and an 8th inning guy. So that they're built for a weird season, but I just think other teams are too.
Forgive me.
Even in the middle of a global pandemic, the Dodgers get better. Wonderful.
I need to know one more thing with your thing about Bart coming up. Does that mean Posey moves to first? And I think you know what question follows after that.
Your guy with the mustache?
Yeah, the guy with the weird mustache.
No, to me, the thing about Bart is like I think Bart's pretty close to being able to hit big league pitching, and we saw that in spring training, and to do it consistently. And I totally agree with what they did. I mean, he was never in position to win the backup job, and he was going to go to AAA and probably spend at least a couple months there. And he needs that. He needs those reps. But if you can't get those reps elsewhere, if the choice is Joey Bart is at home in Georgia, or Joey Bart is your third catcher and gets to pinch hit a few times a week, maybe start once a week, that to me is an easy choice. You get him those reps. So I still think Buster Posey is a starter. I think this more affects the backup guys, because maybe at some point you do want Joey to get more time as opposed to the guys we saw in camp. But I think your guy's okay. Your guy's the first baseman. Gabe Kapler loves him. The front office loves him. So don't worry.
You know who Gabe Kapler loves? Us.
He loves us.
He loves us. That was a great show we had last week.
More time than I've ever spent with him.
Yeah, you want to join our spicy food challenge?
I will join that. I did the hot chip thing in spring training.
You got to do spicy ramen with us. Let's see what happens.
Do that. Yeah, Gabe's a foodie.
I'm into it.
Alex, just expanding on when you mentioned that Arizona is one of the states that's going to be more lenient with this, with how strict California has been with Governor Newsom, and we have a lot of teams in California. You have the A's, you have the Giants, the Angels, the Dodgers, the Padres. That's a lot in the West. And if we can't have games in California, is there already talks of like maybe where they'll be playing if we do start in July?
Everybody I've talked to is optimistic that they'll be back at Oracle Park. I think we're in phase 2 right now of the reopening. I think phase 3 is games without fans. And so I would imagine that if it gets close, and I know from what I've read at least that and Gavin Newsom has said he has talked to the commissioner, he has talked to some of the teams. I think he's done a really nice job during all this. He's also very PR savvy and always has been. I think he does not want to be the guy who will not want to be the guy who says the Giants and A's and Dodgers and Padres, you can't return, but all across the country, everybody else is playing. So I think that'll figure itself out, especially with how many teams we have here. I mean, it's kind of a nightmare then to move them all to another state.
It's almost like all the sports commissioners are kind of in a game of chicken with each other. Like, should we come back? They don't want to be the first one. So I feel like it's almost once one sport starts, another sport starts. I mean, UFC just started. That's completely different, obviously. But it feels like they're just waiting for the first one to go.
Yeah, I think they're all afraid. Well, we're all afraid of is the first one comes back, the first team comes back, and the first guy gets coronavirus. And what do you do? Like, it's a bad visual for your sport, and you have to figure out what to do. So I think that's why they're being cautious.
So going off of that, testing. Testing is very limited in our country already. It's been kind of one of the big taboo things to talk about bringing baseball back is how are they going to have enough testing to test all these guys on a regular basis and make it safe for all of them? Yeah,
that's one of those questions I think the players are asking. And one of those questions I think I'm thinking about just as somebody who has to cover the sport and thinking that the last thing you want is a situation where you're testing these guys every single day. And then, after a couple of weeks of that, you realize like we're taking testing and capabilities away from other people, away from actual first responders, away from people in hospitals. I think they're confident they can get the tests. One thing I don't think I've seen an answer for is how do you get those tests turned around quickly enough that it impacts a big league season. And it takes a few days. It takes weeks for some people. So you don't want to be the Giants and have this impression that you're jumping to the front of the line to make sure that your left-handed reliever is available that night. So that's going to be tough for them. And I think that's one thing. When all this started, everybody was like, yeah, we'll have full testing by May. Well, we don't. So that's another issue to figure out.
Yeah,
I think to be tested so often. Have you guys seen videos of the actual testing where you basically touch your brain? Like, imagine having to do that multiple times.
Well, also,
it's so gnarly.
How do you, yes, you test the players. What about the families? What about people that come into contact with them? Just not the team, you know, like coaches or whoever, right? Whoever's around them regularly. I would assume their families. Do they get tested regularly? Do they have access to healthcare? If a guy gets coronavirus on the road, do they just leave him there? What happens?
Yeah, I read a PGA Tour's trying to come back, and there was a big story about their plan to come back. And very near the end of it was a thing about how if you're a player and you go on tour, you go to one of these golf courses, they have all the rules to make it safe. If you test positive, then they're like, we'll pay for you to drive home. But if you're far enough from your home, they're like, we'll pay for 14 days of your hotel or whatever. Like, that's not an ideal situation. Like you said, I mean, what if the Giants go to Seattle and somebody positive, some guy who lives maybe in Texas and plays in San Francisco now is stuck in Seattle for 2 weeks? There are no answers for that. And one of my favorite baseball writers is Andy McCullough at The Athletic, and he's written a lot about that and keeps retweeting his story where he was like, what happens when guys test positive? And nobody has come out with the answers for that. And I think that is part of what maybe they're telling the players right now, but that part hasn't leaked yet. And that is pretty important.
So if you had to guess, is baseball happening in 2020?
I was very pessimistic 2 or 3 weeks ago. It just looked bad. If I had to guess, I would say they will try. I think they will try in July. I think they want to be the first ones back. I think they feel like this is an opportunity for them. And I think a lot of players want to play. Everybody I've talked to, they have their concerns, but they want to play. So, and guys I've texted with in the last week, they're like, yeah, I'm bored at home. Like, there's only so much yard work I can do. I want to play baseball. So I think they're going to try it. I'm not very confident they're going to get through a full season, but we'll see. I mean, maybe they'll figure out all these things as they go, and maybe it's going to be a weird season no matter what. And maybe if you embrace that fact and embrace the fact that you're going to have a guy who all of a sudden has to sit out for 2 weeks, you can still have baseball.
I also have a question for you. Does that mean you cover everything remotely? Is there a scenario in which they're socially distanced in the press box?
There's going to be no press box. I can't imagine they're going to have beat writers and TV people and radio people in a press box.
Yeah,
Does that just mean they're all in the studio?
What's that?
Does that just mean they're all in the studio instead, just as crowded?
I mean, we haven't even been there for 2 months. So I think, for me, it doesn't make sense to open a press box. It'll be weird covering a game from home. I don't know I haven't heard nothing about that. I've talked to other writers and we've kind of brainstormed a little bit. I don't know if they'll play a game and we'll all watch on TV and we'll get on a Zoom call with Gabe Kapler and Jeff Samardzija afterwards and do it that way. I think that's another thing for them to figure out. Media is usually like the last thing they figure out in CBA negotiations. So they're probably not too worried, and they shouldn't be worried. I mean, ultimately for the Giants, you're talking 5 or 6 beat writers. Other people go there regularly, but it's not a huge problem. And we can work from home. I mean, I've been working from home every day, so we can figure that part out. Maybe we'll have, like you guys are doing right now, maybe the pregame show is this with Kelly and me in a box and Michael Morris and all that.
And people still sending mean tweets.
Yeah, they still will be.
I have the question everyone's thinking. If the baseball league's playing 82 games, how many Alex Eats episodes can you fit in there?
83.
It'll be Alex Cooks, which is good. Yeah, I really one of the things I did in spring training was go through the schedule and start going through. Every year there's that list of weird food that comes out, and you start going through and circling things, and people send me things and go, have you seen what the Diamondbacks are doing this year? So that's one of the many things. I think the weird thing about this is every once in a while you remember something you were supposed to do or something that about regular life, and you're like, oh, that's not part of it anymore. And I generally forget about Alex Eats, and every once in a while I look at the schedule and go like, oh man, we were going to be in Cleveland. Like, that would have been something different. So It's a bummer.
Yeah.
I do know I got a special request from my dad to ask you to get some Alex Eats content out there.
Your
Gotta
dad
make
is
that
either
happen.
my biggest fan or the guy who pushes me the most. In all seriousness, I think I took it easy for like 2 or 3 weeks at some point and like didn't do one on a road trip. And he walked in the press box one night and looked at me and just glared at me until I turned around and just yelled, "Alex Eats," and then just walked out. I was like, okay, it's time to film a video.
Is that what he's done with you too, Cole? Just when you
Yeah.
were growing up, just like
That's exactly it. Make your bed.
Homework.
wash the dishes and then just walks away.
I have one more question. If fans aren't going to be in the stands, have they figured out how they'll create engagement? You know, I think fans are a big part of the game, and I'm imagining that somebody out there is already turning the wheels on it. Have you heard anything about, you know, whether they use tweets or hashtags as crowd noise or some sort of virtual cheering, anything like that?
I saw one story where I guess there's an app where you can like press boo or cheer if something happens, and the more fans press one side or the other, the more noise you have.
That would be awesome.
I can just imagine the
a little
Giants
weird.
fan base doing it for Dodgers games, just boo, boo, boo.
Yeah, I think for me, like that part, I would leave up to the players and ask them what kind of environment they want to play in, because they're used to 40,000 now, 30,000, 26, whatever they get now. But a lot of them, the guys I've talked to, I've actually talked to 3 or 4 guys about not playing in front of fans, and they're like, yeah, that'll be weird, but I mean, we come up playing in high school ball with like your parents in the stands, and then you play in the minors where there's like 400 people in the stands at a lot of these games. They play in the Arizona Fall League, like there's not that many people who actually go to those games. So a lot of these guys are used to it, and I think they wouldn't mind that as much, but I do hope they have some fun. I mean, one thing I really hope they do is mic up the players and make it more fun. If it's a TV product more than an in-person product, I hope they take advantage of that. And they did it in spring training. I know they had a lot of success with miking up players in spring training. So I hope guys are willing to do that. I think there are other ways around it. I don't think you necessarily need, like, I know guys have talked about cardboard cutouts and all that. Like, for me, you can just turn the lights down a little bit and maybe put it on the field.
Yeah.
Like, you know how the Lakers do a game where it's all dark, but then there's
Like,
just the
they call
court
it
in the middle?
theater style or
Yeah.
theater lighting.
I think a little bit of that.
I mean, there's even, I think the NBA does something called ISOCAM, where people can vote who they want to see the lens through, or, you know, see.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think there could be something that makes the television product more enhanced, you know? So
I'll
I think
ask you guys the question a player asked me last week, which is, why wouldn't we just play all day games if we're not going to have the fans anyway and they're not at work? Why would the players be there every night? Why wouldn't they be there during the day? And I thought about it, and I was like,
all 82
it's a good point. Like, if you don't have to worry about people getting off work, they
If
probably
we're
don't want
looking
to be
for
there.
TV ratings, though, TV ratings would be the reason why they would still want to do it at night.
It would.
imagine
Somebody
there's a
way,
lot
way
of-
above me would say no, but
Well, I will say I watched the last 2 UFC events, and it's kind of cool without fans. You can hear what the players are saying, or what the fighters are saying. You can hear their coaches in their corners talking to them, and it kind of gives you almost an inside the game feel. And I wonder if baseball would be similar. You could kind of hear the chatter, hear the coaches, hear the players kind of talking a little smack to each other. I'd be interested in that.
yeah,
I
if
always
you ever
do
watch a
love-
spring training workout, you can be pretty far away and hear what a guy says at first base. So
I always do love when a guy pops out and just yells that really loud F-bomb you can hear on TV. It's like a whole game of that.
Yeah, I think
Be
you
awesome.
have to go all in or all out, and
Yeah.
either just be like, "Hey, everybody, we're miking everything up, just so you know," or just turn everybody's mics down except for your dad and Mike, and just let them do it.
You could do what Fox Sports is planning on doing and pumping in crowd noise for football season this year.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I think players would probably think that's weird.
Yeah.
Like,
a 90s
also-
sitcom.
a lot of these teams
Seinfeld music after a single.
Dun, 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 dun.
have some fun with that. A lot of these teams do weird things on the road. I don't totally trust some of these places we go to be good about
Oh.
what they do with fan noise, and so that'd be weird if you kind of have to regulate it. You could have some places where maybe it's really loud at weird times.
Interesting.
There's a lot to think about.
I'm glad I don't have to do it.
Yeah. And luckily we got to talk a little bit about it with you, and now we just all get to sit and wait even longer.
Yeah, hopefully. I'll just say, I mean, there's a lot to figure out, but I think everybody I've talked to the last week is a lot more optimistic than they were a month ago, which is good news. But again, we've never seen anything like this, so it could all turn next week. But I think they're optimistic at least.
So let's end on a high note.
Yes.
Thanks so much for joining us, Alex.
Sure.
We appreciate your insight and your knowledge. This was another episode of Shelter on Base. Thanks so much to Carmen Kiew, Anthony Garcia, Cole Kuiper, and of course, Alex. More Alex Eats. Alex Eats, right?
Yes. I'll eat at home.
Eat at home. So thanks so much, everyone. We'll have another episode of Shelter on Base coming your way shortly.
Put Barry in the Hall of Fame.
Oh,